Hi everybody, this is your final video um, for HBSE 2 that you'll be watching online. The whole purpose of today's online assessment module is to kind of recap what we learned in HBSE 2. There was so much content in the last 7-8 weeks, and so this is kind of bringing it all together, giving a real quick and dirty these are what's important to remember in each life stage. Why is it important to social work? And just to kind of bring it all back together. So I just wanted to take a minute to kind of reflect on why HBSE content is so important to learn. We devote 2 semesters to HBSE, HBSE 1 and HBSE 2. So obviously there's a foundational element to it that I believe is very important for social workers to have, especially as you guys kind of gear up to start taking your practice classes next year. So here's kind of my humble opinion why we teach HBSE, why it's the classes that I like to teach, because I do really believe in its content. So my first thought is it's really impossible to fully understand someone without considering the context of their environment. So that was really kind of the strong emphasis of HBSE 1 was person and environment over time. So looking at all those key dimensions and kind of exploring what it means for a person to be impacted psychologically, about how their communities, small groups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all environmental pieces. And you can't separate the person from what's going on around them. So I was going to give kind of an example, kind of thinking about environment. So as you all know, I've talked at length. I have 5 children, and so I am a working mother. We're in the middle of COVID, where it's very unknown about when our kids are going to be in school, when our kids not going to be in school, are they going to have a snow day or not? So this is a great example. I had planned to record this video earlier today in my office, not looking like this. Instead, I have kids home for a snow day. And so trying to coordinate, making sure they got breakfast, making sure they're getting up, was the driveway snowplowed so I could get out of the driveway to go bring my child to daycare. Kind of prompted me to, I have no makeup on, my hair is in a bun, wearing a sweatshirt, lacking a lot of professionalism that you would maybe expect from your professor in recording a video. So you could make the assumption that A, I'm very unprofessional, or that I don't value my job because I'm looking a hot mess. Or if you're looking at me in the context of my environment, it makes more sense why I might be presenting this way, because there's so many external factors taking my time and taking my energy that I wanted to get this video up in a timely manner. So I sacrificed delaying it, or I sacrificed how I look in order to get it up for the class. And so that's kind of a silly maybe example, but it is really important to always consider the context, because you don't want to make assumptions about something that's happening or think you know the whole story without kind of peeling back those layers. And so when you guys did your case studies, you kind of looked at the environment of your client and how that kind of impacted behaviors. And so that's really good practice to start doing now, on a fake client. So one day when you do have your client, you're going to be able to know how to look at behaviors and ask those questions to kind of flesh out what their environment looks like. And that actually brings me to my second point of why HBSE is really important. I think around the life stages especially, so that was HBSE 2, really helps our assessment skills. And as you guys prep to do the final exam, one of the things is demonstrating how you do assessment, intervention, those kind of professional skills of the professional skills of the profession. That's weirdly worded. But it's kind of learning how to do social work well. I think social work, because a lot of it is oh, I just interact with people, I love people. Anybody can do that, but having those specific skill set to flesh out information, that comes with your education, especially around assessment. So life skills or life stages, we now understand what typical behavior is in all of these different stages. So if you're working in a context where you are working with a teenager, and they might be showing some more regressive type behaviors, behaviors that maybe match an earlier stage, that would be a red flag during your assessment. And you'd want to try to figure out maybe trauma occurred in an earlier stage and they're kind of stuck in that. And so then we target intervention to kind of help get them unstuck and process through that trauma so they can progress more normally or naturally through the next stages. Knowing these life stages can help us, especially I think if we're dealing with adults and there's like maladaptive behavior, having difficult with relationships, maybe really poor coping, we know to maybe go look back at infancy and toddlerhood and explore, did you have really poor attachment when you were in that stage? And if yes, okay, then we know what that looks like and how to help a client process it. So it's expanding our knowledge. And again, it's helping us not make assumptions because we have clinical information to kind of back some of our, not assumptions, our hunches. So we think, maybe this person had poor attachment with their mother, and so then we know to ask those questions. Again, we don't have to be experts in every life stage and remember like, oh, in infancy, this is the Erickson stage of development, or all those specific theoretical things are very important. And if you can remember and retain them, it's actually going to help quite a bit. But just kind of knowing in general, like what to look for in each life stage is going to be helpful because it's going to trigger you to be like, oh, that's a red flag. I maybe need to do a little bit more research again and refresh myself what normal development looks like. But it's going to prompt you to do those things and better help your clients. And then finally, it builds our empathy. And then as I said in the last 2 slides too, it encourages us not to make assumptions. And so with knowledge comes power. Lack of knowledge can often get us into tricky situations where you could hurt the client and provide a relationship by making an assumption based on what you think is going on. And so these life stages and all of the HBSE dimensions remind us that people are not one-dimensional. They're very, very multi-dimensional, and that their behavior isn't always solely their choice. There might be greater factors into play. And it can help us be more empathetic to the person instead of jumping in to make a judgment. So thinking of substance abuse, often it can be people's assumption like, oh, you should just be able to quit, or you know it's bad for you, why are you using? But if you kind of journey back through some of their life stages, maybe that was substance use was present their entire life, and so it's very normalized. Maybe something traumatic happened, and that's the way they coped. I know one of the case studies that one of members of the class had written was talking about how their client got a painkiller addiction. And if you would just come into the client's journey at that point and looking at like, oh, this client is addicted to painkillers and make assumption A, B, and C or judgment A, B, and C. Well, this client was an athlete and he had a knee injury that stopped his athletic career. So he lost his identity as an athlete. He lost his sense of purpose playing competitive sports. And so the painkillers that were naturally and appropriately prescribed for the injury then resulted in a coping mechanism because it numbed out all of that kind of grieving and tension that was going on about the loss of identity and loss of roles. This also happened in adolescence when role identity is huge. And so understanding that all of those pieces are in play, which may have led to this addiction that is the presenting concern, can help us be empathetic and not make those like swift judgments and assumptions about why people are behaving the way they are. So again, with knowledge comes power. And so this really helps equip you to be a great professional and kind of building that foundation of how to look at clients versus just looking at the presenting problem, but looking at that big picture. And now you have tools and you have knowledge to kind of help assist you with looking at that big picture. So it's great class. You made it through 2 semesters of it. We'll be revisiting a lot of this stuff throughout the practice classes in the next couple of years. So this content isn't going away. So hopefully it will be something that continues to influence your social work journey in a positive way. Bye.